Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to another round of rapid fire racing action in the Sim Racing Collective MX-5 Championship for 2025 as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC known as iRacing. We're back then for round number 2 of 6 in the championship campaign that leaves us all answering the question, who is the master or mistress of the MX-5 racing machine from Mazda? And last time out in round number 1, what a round it was at the Okayama International Racing Circuit, where nobody was quite a clear favourite, regardless of whether they were in the Pro or the AM classes. And with a variety of Okayama, we have made our way from Japan to Germany for an even more varied circuit. Because here we are today near the city of Nürburgring for the Nürburgring Sprint Strecker Circuit. The sprint layout of the Grand Prix circuit, which originated in 2002, is a circuit that spans the best part of 2.26 miles and consists of 11 corners. Focused entirely on the northern section of the Grand Prix circuit, it is a course that whilst it sacrifices some of the more notable parts, perhaps most so the Michael Schumacher S that you would see at the southern end of the circuit, it does not sacrifice an interesting contrast of two halves. The first half of the lap is all about low-speed apexes, hairpins and switchbacks. Meanwhile, the second half of the lap is where the average apex speed rises quite significantly, and we see the arrival of sweeping bends, an extended back straight, and also a very tricky low-speed chicane. But marry it all together, and it means it's a perfect opportunity for our drivers to be able to show their talents as they go racing over our 2 races for today, and you have the absolute joy of being able to see who is going to be able to come out on top in this second round of the championship. But where are my manners? Allow me to welcome you to this live broadcast from Circuit Side. Indeed, you're tuning in right now via the official The Sim Racing Collective YouTube channel, as only available on youtube.com, and search for TSRC or the Sim Racing Collective and you can be tuning in there. And it's great to have so many of you tuning in once again, much like last time out. And if you are in the chat right now, don't be shy, feel free to say hi. We're not going to bite here. The only biting you'll see will be the biting of brakes into each and every heavy braking zone. But as I try to get ready to go racing today, in the commentary booth you have myself. My name is Paul Walsh, also known as TX141 or Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. Now we bring you all your racing action as it unfolds. And in terms of how it unfolds tonight, well, in approximately 3 minutes time at 8:05 this evening, all times shown based on the UK time zone, will be 8:05 this evening, and we'll be going into our solo qualifying session, 10 minutes in duration, an outlap plus 3 flying laps for each of our drivers, and they'll be looking to put it on pole before they go racing for the first of our 2 races. Race number 1, of course, being our 15-minute sprint race, due to get underway at 8:15 this evening, after which we take a brief 3-minute breather before returning to the grid at just after 8:30 for our 30-minute feature race. But the top 10 of the grid will be inverted from race number 1, and we'll be looking forward to seeing over double the time distance who will be coming out on top. But as we make our way into this round, well, let's give you a recap of the season so far and what's still lying in wait, and also those all-important championship standings after a single round. So starting with the season ahead, we can see here that we have made our way then from Japan to the Nürburgring, and this is round number 2, and it's a wonderful Monday the 15th of September. Albeit the weather right now in the United Kingdom not so bright, but the weather here at the circuit, it staved off the rain. There was a low chance of rain potentially making its way over, but participation has not made its way to Germany, and instead is staying off in the distance, perhaps over the Eiffel Mountains. Indeed, our drivers will be racing in dry conditions with some overcast skies. After this round, they'll be making their way to the United Kingdom for the Silverstone International Circuit on the 22nd of September. Which we can expect that on the faster of the 2 shorter layouts of the Silverstone circuit, that our drivers be absolutely going nip and tuck with each other, while they then make their way into the second half of the season in Spain at the Navarra Speed Circuit Medium. There, it's all going to be about the wide open course owned by MSV and seeing what our drivers can do for a number of eclectic sweeping bends, for then the penultimate round of the season, they'll make their way to the United States of America for the Watkins Glen Internationals Cup Circuit, and then we bring the curtain down, of course, in Austria, back on the European continent at the Red Bull Rings National Course on Monday the 13th of October. We've got plenty of rounds still to go, plenty of excitement coming into this round in particular, and as we make our way in, let's talk a little bit about the circuit, shall we? Because we've mentioned previously the length of the sprint strecker, 2.26 miles and 11 corners, but when you look at it, a track map, however, this circuit map provided by iRacing.com really brings it to life. A wonderful 2-dimensional image provided by the owners and regulators of the sim racing platform, and a big thank you to them for their track maps that are contained within it. This circuit located near the city of Nürburgring in the Ahrweiler district of the state of Rhineland-Palatinate of Germany. Well, it's an iconic one. Perhaps a little bit less iconic compared to its Eiffel Mountains successor, of course, being the Nürburgring Gesamtstrecke, or the Nürburgring combined, or even the Nordschleife, the circuit which originated before the Grand Prix layout of the Nürburgring. Well, either way, this is one of those circuits that continues to deliver year in, year out in real-life racing, and the fact the Sprint Strecke is regularly used for club-level racing, as would be MX-5 Cup-level racing. You'll typically see it as well for touring car racing on the European continent, and you can even occasionally see it go all the way out to international racing in lower speed disciplines. But as we mentioned earlier, a circuit of two halves with turns 1 through to 5 really being the first half of the lap, with the infamous Mercedes Arena or the AMG Arena really dominating the first half of the lap and being a very tricky sequence of corners, the turns 1 through to 4, where it's all about nailing direction changes and those low speed apexes and also a bit of road camber. As our drivers make their way out of turn number 5 and head towards Ravenhall Curve, it'll be turns 6 and 7. Ravenhall followed by Bilstein. We'll see those medium speed apexes, and it will be all about who can get to the throttle as quickly as possible at corner apex and go full throttle all the way. None more so than perhaps at turn number 8 at Van Bergen, as they'll go through that right-hander, the fast right-hander and the fastest point on the circuit, but will break into the slowest point on the circuit at the Vidal chicane, the low speed variant at turns 9 and 10, before they complete lap of the Hyundai N-curve at turn number 11 to start it all over again, or to finally see that checker flag. But as our drivers go racing today, a quick reminder of the rules. This is a fixed setup series with setups provided to our drivers ahead of each and every round of racing. Qualifying, it's a closed qualifying format. All the drivers have free flying laps available to them, and they will be doing them without the pressure of having to deal with other drivers out on circuit with them. As for our races, well, the sprint race grid is set based on results of qualifying, that's a given, and for the feature race grid, as we alluded to earlier, we take the finishing positions of the sprint race and we flip the top 10 around, and that is how we set the grid for our second race a day. So first through to 10th, they're inverted, but 11th and downwards, they start exactly where they finished in the sprint race. Each driver has one fast pair available in each of the races, and if they manage to pick up 17 or more instant points, they will be awarded with a drive-through penalty in a given race. Meanwhile, all race shooting shall be conducted post-round. But as we make our way back to circuit side, well, as the circuit starts to come alive with qualifying, let's give you a quick recap of the championship standings then as we make our way into this round. And as we begin with the Pro Drivers' Championship, we can see that after one round, it is Jamie Nuttall who leads for Cracked Racing by 6 points over Tom Davidson. The difference between these two drivers, it was a small one, and it was Jamie Nuttall who was able to fight his way through into what was a winning position in race number 2 at the feature race at Okayama, whereas for Davidson, it didn't quite work out despite him taking the win in the sprint race, whereby he found himself getting caught up in the traffic in the feature race and therefore was not quite able to carve his way through to make it a back-to-back run of victories, or even, in fact, back-to-back podiums, whereas for Jamie Nuttall, 2 podiums, a second in the sprint race and a win in the feature race. That was the difference between the two of them, but both of the drivers were slightly ahead of the rest of their peers. And speaking of the rest of their peers, best of the rest, it was a Sim Racing Collective Esports' Kieran Sharp, behind his teammate there by 7 points, but he really led the charge from everybody else, taking that win in what was the second of the races. In terms of his mind, he feels like it was a win, as he picked up a brilliant run of points there, and, well, of course, also picking up that 4th place in the first race of the day at Okayama. But in 4th place there, we see Francesco Petalin, the absolute merciful ASIF driver, who kept us guessing as to where he would finish in both races, an absolutely ferocious driver there on 35 points, one ahead of Nick Clibbins at iRacing Esports, who completes your top 5, and it's Craig Twardock for MSA Racing in 6th, 3 ahead of Bradley Horsenall, with the privateer then being followed up by the iRacing Esports pair of Sam Smith and Alan McCain, and behind the Irishman completing your top 10, it's Miles Owens for Sim Race Sweden. Outside the top 10 of the pros, Bart Raven sits in 11th ahead of Andrew Pike, both drivers there wishing for a lot more at Okayama, particularly Andrew Pike. It didn't quite go his way whatsoever, so he'll be hoping for a better day in the sun today, with Clive Bourne in 13th place, a further point behind, and it's Cracked Racing's William Chandler and Liam Giles who complete your top 15, and yet score any points. We do see there Gergely Kunzabo, Balzolden, and also we do see there Toby Prosser ahead of none other than Marlon Schwab, and -5 points there to Kieran O'Reilly for MSA Racing. But 20 drivers from Pro, we then make our way into the AMS, and as we look to the AMS standings, well, here we can see it's Paul Sims who leads by a single point over Daniel Moffat, and it's a further 2 points there to Martin Foster. 3 points separate the top 3, and it was these 3 drivers who absolutely locked out the podium in both races in our season opener. Nobody else was allowed on that podium, and they absolutely tore their way away. What's the delta between them? Why is it that Paul Sims is at the very top? Well, he was the faster driver over the distance in the feature race. He had the better consistency after 20 minutes, and that is what enabled him to gradually pull away from Daniel Moffat in particular and disappear off into the distance, only by a slender margin, but it was noticeable. Martin Foster, you could argue, back-to-back second places at Okayama. It didn't quite work out for him the way he wanted it to. It was unfortunate not to secure a win, but a good qualifying performance added to those 2 second places means that he's right in the mix with his top 2 rivals. Matt Smith then leads the rest of the field on 31 points for Cracked Racing behind the RPMS Sim Sport driver, with a privateer there of Corelio Toran around off your top 5. And it's a further 2 points to Lenny Hansen for Bottle Job Racing, albeit he definitely didn't bottle it in either of the races, it must be said. Mark Pizer sits in 7th ahead of Gav Ronda, and then we do have Janos Lenzel and Mav Gardner completing your top 10. And keep your eyes out for the German driver today on home soil. He was the fastest of the AM drivers in qualifying. He absolutely demolished qualifying, but he also experienced a major demolition job when it came to race number 1, which set him all the way to the back of the field for race number 2, and we never quite got to see what the 313 driver can do, and that's what we're looking forward to today. In 11th place, best the rest, Valerio Tedeschi ahead of Luke Smith for FD Racing, and it's 2 points behind them. That is Idios Motorsports, Alex Skinner and David Long for La Braca Racing Team, and a third point behind it's Mickey Ford with yet score any points, Martin Rendell, Thomas Martin and Brad Bunn, and that is how your 18 AM drivers stand after one round of the championship. But that's enough talking about the championship stands and setting the scene. We need to talk a little bit about our drivers who are on the circuit right now. And well, we are in the midst of qualifying. We are already 5 minutes in, and our drivers are setting their laps. In fact, they're coming on to their final qualifying laps already, and with this, we'll now see them in their best possible trim as they make their way around. And at the moment, at least, it is Jack Southfield who's looking to be the fastest of everybody out there, as we do see the newcomer to the grid today lighting up the time tower at the very top. And indeed, the last time I had the opportunity to cover the number 98 driver in a series, where it was briefly in the Next Gen Racing Touring Car Championship, where he did act as a substitute for some of his colleagues for the Sim Racing Collective Esports. But from Touring Car to MX-5 Racing Machine, he's definitely shown that his pace has not slowed down whatsoever. In fact, he's only getting faster and faster. And well, right now, can Southfield put himself on pole and lead the field away in race number 1? Well, he's definitely on course for that right now if he carries on this momentum, albeit Jamie Nuttall, meanwhile, practically at the same point in the circuit with him, and, well, he's only the best part of 800ths behind. So the number 14 driver here will be hoping that he just found a little bit more out there, given the fact the delta in the lap time right now is so slender, it could only take one tiny mistake in a corner. That would be the difference. Meanwhile, in the AMS, it is currently Lenny Hansen who's the fastest out there, with Mav Gardner not too far behind, and that's 17th and 18th between these two. Intriguingly, only the best part there of 200ths between them. Such a slender margin, but nobody else in the AMS really lighting up the timing tower at the moment, albeit we have got a lot of AMS yet to get a bad lap on the board, including the man who owns an MX-5 in real life, and he's definitely demonstrating his knowledge of the car here on the simulator. Paul Sims in the 321, he's all the way down in 32nd at the moment with no valid lap set, so therefore you'll be hoping for a bit more, as Nuttall, meanwhile, steals away pole position overall on a 42.40 from Jack Southfield, who did not improve on his final qualifying lap, so therefore it does seem as though the pendulum has swung to Nuttall at the very last moment, with Kieran Sharp moving back into 3rd ahead of Francesco Petterlin. So that top 4 looking very good, as Tom Davidson cross the line on 42.529. Petterlin jumps up to 3rd as well, so Davidson there squeezing his way onto the front row of the grid, so we will see a TSRC car on that front row. But what about our AMS? Well, Sam Smith right now is not one of our AMS, he's one of our pros parked up there, as Daniel Moffat, one of the leading 3 contenders in the AM Championship after round number 1. Well, he's currently in 4th place of the AMS, 21st overall, but what can he deliver from here? And the answer is, well, I think he's going to find a little bit more if he can, because right now it does not look as though he's going to be that close to his rivals, as Sims meanwhile jumps up to 3rd in the AMS, 20th overall, a good lap from him. And well, as Moffat comes across the line, currently 23rd, he moves up to 22nd on a 43.899. He won't be too happy about that. He'll be happy he's made some progress up the order, but not enough. And Jals Wenzel, meanwhile, well, he's still out there on his qualifying laps at the moment. He is going to get this one last lap in, but he won't get a 3rd flying lap in. He's only on his 2nd lap. He's definitely taking his time in this qualifying session. as he makes his way on around here. Well, Wenzel right now 6th for the AMS and 24th overall, but I suspect we may see him improve here given the way he's hustling the car around the circuit. Are there any surprises given most of our trying to finish their qualifying laps? And the answer is, well, Wenzel is one of the surprises that we're not seeing him immediately up there. Another surprise potentially, as we do see Martin Foster steal his way in towards the AM pole position. That's 15th overall for Martin Foster for RPMS Simsport, the man who missed out on a win at Okayama in the AMS. He's found it. William Chandler heads into the pit lane. He's not too happy about his qualifying session has ended. Well, in terms of other surprises out there, perhaps one of the big surprises out there is the fact that we do have Sam Smith all the way down in 23rd. The iRacing Simsports driver, known for performing inside the top 10 at Okayama. He's a long way off the pace, it seems here. Albeit I say a long way off the pace, given the fact he's 1.5 seconds off the overall pole time. But if he found a single 10th out there, he would immediately be leaping his way up to 21st. If he had found 2 tenths, he would be all the way up in 20th. That shows you how tight the margins are here in these MX-5s, or as I like to say, the margins are truly marginal. And as he roars his way around the corner, Jonas Wenzel will know exactly that, because it's slender margins that could be the difference between him being 6th in the AM class in qualifying or being on pole position. But what will it be as he crosses the timeline this time around? The answer is going to be, I don't think it's an improvement for Wenzel. In fact, it is a personal improvement, but it's not a valid lap. So for Wenzel, he must have hit track limits somewhere out there, and his qualifying session will come to a close. He won't be allowed to finish his final qualifying lap because the clock is only 5 seconds away from 10 minutes. And when we do strike 10 minutes, that's it. Qualifying is done and dusted, and they will immediately make their way to the grid, ladies and gentlemen, for our first race of the day. So as our drivers make the way onto the grid for our sprint race here, race number 3 of the championship, how do they line up at the Nürburgring sprint strecker? Well, as we can see, it's Jamie Nuttall who lines up on pole position for Cracked Racing on a 42.398. A brilliant effort from him, and he is joined on that front row of the grid by none other than Tom Davidson for the Sim Racing Collective Esports. Francesco Petalin starts third for Absolute Motorsport 8 lift, the Italian driver there being joined by Jack Salfield on his debut for the Sim Racing Collective Esports. And then we have Kieran Sharp, his teammate just behind, starting 5th, ahead of Miles Owens, who starts 6th for Sim Race Sweden. On row at number 4, we'll have Nick Clemens for iRacing Esports, continuing to keep the British outfit very truly inside that top 10, and he'll be very happy with that 7th place. Only a 10th faster than Craig Twardock for MSA Racing, who fell a little bit lower down the order towards the very end of the qualifying session, but I don't think he'll be too gutted about that because we know he's got a lot of race pace at his fingertips. Bart Raven starts off the 5th row of the grid for Cracked Racing, another good qualifying performance there from the Dutchman, ahead of Liam Giles, his teammate, who rounds off the top 10. In 11th, best to rest, it's Marlon Schwab for DLR FPT, and the German driver there on home soil being joined by William Chandler for Cracked Racing. And keep your eyes out for Schwab there in the fact he might be able to move his way forward quite early on. Behind them on row number 7, it's Alan McCain for iRacing Esports, a bit further down than where he would like to be in this qualifying session, no doubt about that. And Kieran O'Reilly joins him there, 14th place for MSA Racing. Martin Foster, the AM pole sitter for RPMS Simsport, starts 15th ahead of Bradley Horsenall. The priority then being followed up by the pro pair of Andrew Pint for the Sim Racing Collective Esports and Big Pig Racing by VRS's Clive Bourne. Second of the AMs, it's 19th place from Av Gardner for Sim Racing Collective Esports, ahead of Championship leader Paul Sims of the AMs, privateer in 20th place. And it's Lenny Hansen 21st for Bottle Job Racing, ahead of Daniel Moffat, the privateer. And they'll be followed up then by Sam Smith for iRacing Esports and Janis Wenzel, the privateer, who starts 24th. But watch out for him. I get the feeling he's got a lot of pace in that car, and he's just not had the opportunity to show it in qualifying. On row number 13, it'll be Matt Smith for Cracked Racing and the privateer of Mark Peza. And then we do have behind the South African driver, the Britons are Martin Rendell and Thomas Martin for Shadow Drag Racing, with Carillo Turan starting 29th, the privateer, ahead of Valerio Tedeschi. And then from the Italian in 30th, on the final full row of the grid, it's Gareth Ronda, the privateer, ahead of David Long for La Braca Racing Team. And last but not least, starting in 33rd place, you've got FD Racing's Luke Smith there for a difficult qualifying session, but I'm sure he's going to try and move forward as the race gets going and indeed find his pace, which a lot of our AM drivers, they'll gradually do that over the course of the season and expect them to improve as the rounds go on. So that is the grid as it's set, ladies and gentlemen, and we are not too far away from going racing. 30 seconds before the lights go on, and all drivers absolutely itching to go racing. And the thing for Jamie Nuttall, as we're all the way down towards turn number 1, you can't see turn 1, it's a downhill run, it's a downhill braking zone, and it's at the best part of 7 cars wide in terms of the amount of space available. But will he be under pressure from this man, Tom Davidson, who starts on that inside line from 2nd place, but has got a little bit more yardage to drag race his way down. But if he gets a good launch, he could be right there with his rival as they get underway. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to find out, because of course it is time for our first race race here at the Nürburgring Sprint Tracker in round number 2 of the Sim Racing Collective MX-5 Championship for 2025. So it's 1, it's 2, it's 3, it's 4, it's 5 lights. And it's lights out and away we go for our first race of the day here as Jamie Nuttall gets our sprint underway. And as they charge away on down, where it's a good launch there from Tom Davidson. But look at Francesco Petalin, who got the best launch of the top 3. Immediately decides to cut to the inside, but can he find a move here under braking? The answer's going to be no, but Tom Davidson sipes his way to the inside. That had to be expected, but he can't find his way in either as they all make the way on through. The blimp camera there not really offering us any perspective, so as to try to make the way around. Well, everyone's safely on through, but Petalin on the outside there, and as he's slightly elbowed out there by the charger Jack Southfield, he'll drop down to 4th place. AM drivers further back. Well, Kieran O'Reilly there ahead of Martin Foster. Your AM leader is Foster, but 2 by 2 they now exit the AMG arena, and it's looking as though everybody is safely through for the first time of asking, which is great to see. As Krilio Toran, he finds himself in a 3-piece sandwich here with Gareth Ronda and Mav Gardner and Martin Rendell just in front of him, and they're going to try and go 3 wide here coming through in towards turn number 5, but in the end breaking the way into the hairpin of the sprint hairpin. There's going to be a change there with Krilio Toran is passed by Gareth Ronda on his inside, and the Future Armour machine moves forward, but Toran gets the better run. It's 3 wide again into the pinch there into turn number 6. They're not holding any punches, these 3. They've only just started this race, to be fair, but they're not showing any signs of being patient about it. But suddenly Toran is going to back off, as that is going to be Thomas Martin on his inside there in the other Future Armour machine for Shadow Dreg Racing. But whilst all this is playing out towards the front of the field, the top 2 are breaking away. Fight for 3rd meanwhile. Jack Southfield right now having to put a bit of a cork in the proverbial bottle versus Francesco Petalin and Kieran Sharp. As hold up a second, we'll look car around, and that is Craig Tardock there in the Williams Martini racing machine, who's gone all the way round on the apex of the sprint chicane. We have to try and find out what's happened to him shortly, because we need a replay of that, and Tardock has fallen all the way down the order as your top 5 meanwhile start to ascend the way away from the rest of the field. So after 1 lap of racing, it is Nuttall ahead of Davidson, followed by Southfield, then Petalin and Sharp. Top 5 right now are really rolling off into distance and trying to work together. Meanwhile, in 6th, it's Owens ahead of Raven, followed by Giles, and then McCain and Chandler completing your top 10, with Kieran O'Reilly best the rest in a length as they all come charging down to the braking zone. Somebody there's decided to extend the corner, and I believe that might have been the car of Liam Giles. They're taking a bit of an excursion for Cracked Racing in the very colourful machine. Yes, it was, and well, in the end, he brings it back together now as they head down to the braking zone, albeit that's in fact Bart Raven, I should say. Giles was in the less colourful machine on his outside, but gets the inside of turn number 4 and is able to hold on to position as his teammate now is forced backwards to battle with Chandler. Now, they're not quite working together, the 2 teammates, but I think they're enjoying the racing. We can't blame them for it, as Alan McCain looks up the inside there and moves back into 8th place. Bit of contact between himself and Raven, but they'll sort that one out, and I think that will be just a small love tap between the 2 of them, and no foul, no harm, no discouragement from them. But as they come roaring the way in towards turn 6 and 7, all these drivers right now, as much as they want to fight, they also recognise fighting costs time, and that is time they can't necessarily make up in these MX-5s, because the slipstream on them is very powerful. You lose the slipstream of the car in front, and suddenly you'll find yourself really relegated to battling with the drivers around you and not chasing the big prizes. Speaking of which, you can see Tom Davidson there trying to push Jamie Nuttall along as much as possible and saying to him, just keep going, Jamie. I don't want to fight you, but I think Jamie might have other ideas here, because we will get a good number of laps in over the 15-minute duration. We'll keep you abreast as to when we are on that final lap. These drivers all pushing each other along, as meanwhile we've got slowdown penalties there for both Sam Smith and Bradley Horsnell for cutting the Vidal chicane, and well, Smith decides to back off down the outside line, serves the penalty for the Hyundai N-Curve. Meanwhile, Horsnell decides to serve it on the start-finish straight as Paul Sims tries to tuck into the toe, and then suddenly realises, oh, he's trying to serve a slowdown. I'm going to have to quickly get away, because otherwise I'm going to rear-end the man. But as they head down that start-finish straight, Smith still burning a slowdown penalty. That is an egregious penalty he's having to burn right now, taking a very long time, and that yellow flag, you'll need to clear it quickly, because otherwise he will get that converted into a drive-through penalty. As we're going to get a bit of a pinch there for Marlon Schwab as he looks around the outside. He did have Daniel Moffat and Matt Smith looking up his inside, but in the end, those 2 sort out their differences. And speaking of Matt Smith, well, right now he finds himself in 6th place of the AMS, or 22nd overall. Not exactly where he wants to be right now, Smith. I think in his mind, oh goodness me, that's not right. That's not right at all. That's Jans Benzel, who goes very sideways out of turn number 3 and ends up collecting one of his rivals, and that's Marlon Schwab, who ends up getting collected with him. And all suddenly, the AM driver and the Pro driver, they both looking good in this one, and it's all gone backwards, and the 2 home heroes coincidentally end up coming into contact here. Well, that's going to be heartbreaking for the locals. Socials, because that is not the way they wanted to go, and Schwab needs to tow to the pits. He's got a damaged front suspension as a result of that contact, and that car will not be going anywhere without a fast repair after its tow's completed. But as our leaders, meanwhile, they avoid all the chaos and carnage further back. They try to keep their heads down as much as possible. A top 5 of pros here, and they're putting on a professional performance. We have had a bit of a shuffle. Jack Southfield is now into the lead ahead of Tom Davidson, who's looking up his inside, and then Jamie Nuttall has fallen back to 3rd. But I get the feeling that will be by mutual choice between the drivers here. They'll be looking to work together to make sure they do not fight their way backwards towards 6th place. And that's Miles Owens you see in the rear of the picture, who takes a very wide exit there coming out of turn number 11, using all the throttle pedal and extra, and indeed using all the tarmac and value-added tarmac with that. That's what VAT stands for. And as he makes his way down towards turn number 1, he has got Liam Giles and Alan McCain trying to give pursuit. But McCain has got aspirations here to move into 7th ahead of Giles. He'll look up the inside. Giles says, "Okay, Alan, go for it. I'm not going to fight it too hard," or is he? In fact, he has a change of heart. As hold up, that's Jamie Nuttall. That's the Pro Championship leader who's gone round at turn number 1. Now, was he aided on his spin, or was that his own volition? We're going to need to get a replay of that to find out. We've got several replays we're going to need to get, but there has been some drama in the early stage of this race, and we are only 6 minutes in, if that, and suddenly it's all gone backwards, and that's a perfect time for us to cut away and take a look at some of the moments from the open lap of the race, and subsequently what's happened as the racing has gone on. We begin with a replay of Craig Tardock. Now, this was on lap number 1, heading up towards the Vidal chicane. Keep your eye on the MSA Racing Martini Porsche livery machine. And as he made his way on the brake, in a small tap on the rear there from the number 13, that was Nick Clearins, who tried to stop to show respect, but in the end realised that he was being pushed along by his teammate from iRacing Esports, and that would have been Alan McCain. So Tardock there just been turned around under brake, and he won't be too pleased about that, but that's the way it's gone. We then had this for Thomas Martin. I believe this might have been subsequently him coming into the scene of that incident, having to take to an escape route in the Shadow Dragon Racing machine, and indeed had to cut to the right hand side and took his way over the grass. He would have picked up a slowdown for that. However, it was better than making contact. That's going to be the thing in his mind. We then had this for Janus Wenzel on lap number 3, and this was the priority to get it all wrong on the exit of the AMG Arena. Made his way into turn number 3, rear of the car cutting loose, tries to correct it, overcorrects it, rear comes around again as he gets the throttle pedal down, and then unfortunately, well, that was his fellow countryman there, Marlon Schwab, just in the wrong place at the right time. And speaking of that from Marlon Schwab's perspective, here was the replay from Schwab's on board, and well, he'll be watching Wenzel here and he'll be thinking, okay, he's cut a little loose, but he's corrected it, and then suddenly gets the power down, looks to his right, oh no, it's all gone wrong there, and we had no real time to react, and I can't blame him for that, because that would not have been easy to react to. But on lap number 4, here was the big drama into turn number 1. Jamie Nuttall running 3rd for Cracked Racing. Up is inside. Meanwhile, there was a look from Petterlin. 3 wide, they went into the apex. A small tap there. Petterlin also went sideways, and that sent Nuttall on around, because the way the weight transferred after that tiny tap, it would have done the damage in terms of spinning around. We ride on board here with Petterlin to give you an alternative perspective of what happened. And as we can see, under braking, the smallest of taps, but it's exaggerated by the fact as the drivers come down through the apex, they are dropping to a much lower point on the circuit, and therefore all the way to the car, Sonny just jumps downwards the best part of a couple of meters, and that is why it was a big spin there for none other than Jamie Nuttall, who, as we come back to your live racing, ladies and gentlemen, now has to try and work his way forward from 13th place for Cracked Racing. That is going to be very painful, but to be fair, that's why championships are won over the entirety of the round, not over one round. As we do look here to Clive Bourne, the pro driver in 14th place. He's been surrounded by a couple of AMs, and speaking of AMs, that's Martin Foster, still AM leader here in the RPS SimSport machine, that being in the aqua blue and grey livery, the very light grey livery configuration, chasing after the Cadbury Cream Egg. And I need to have a word with Clive about that, because he is making me hungry already looking at that car, and well, I need to make sure I don't eat too much chocolate. But as they come charging out of turn number 11 from chocolate right now, it's looking quite sweet here for Clive Brown, as he looks to try and hold on to this position and move a little bit further forward. Then we make our way into the second half of the race, 9 minutes complete. We still do have the best part of about 6 laps remaining, including the one they've gone into, and Foster here trying to pull away because Lenny Hansen's not too far behind, and Lenny is the second place AM driver, Bottle Job Racing, who, despite his team name, is doing a brilliant job of not bossing it right now, and indeed is actually looking on course for his maiden podium of the season, with Paul Sims a little bit further behind, but between the two of them is Sam Smith, the iRacing Esports Pro driver, who's just been quite smart with the draft at this point. As hold up a second, that's a car parked up. That is William Chandler, who's been turned around there at the AMG Arena. How exactly has he gone around? We're going to have to try and find out in due course, but the AMG Arena has definitely claimed a couple of cars here today, and it's just been the sprint race so far. And I would imagine if Chandler's on the inside of the apex of turn number 3, and that's been through contact with another driver, I would be very, very confused if he managed to put himself there of his own volition. But then again, that's why our drivers are able to surprise us each and every time. But you don't normally see a driver there unless they've been in some sort of contact. But speaking of contact here, trying not to make contact, Sam Smith versus Lenny Hansen. And Hansen right now being passed there by Smith through turns 6 and 7. And as they make the way up, it's now going to be Sims who looks to try and make his way through, because Hansen have a very poor run out the corner. Sims just absolutely catapults his way through, and he's picked up the double toe. He's going to look up the inside here in towards Vidal. Is he going to be able to find it? The answer is no. He definitely went for it there, did Paul Sims, and well, who can blame him for trying? Definitely a good attempt. But as they head up towards turn at number 11, and look up the inside there from Hansen on Sims. He's going to come back, and it is Lenny. He absolutely wants this back right now, and I think Paul's going to be saying to himself, but Lenny, we've got Martin just up the road from us. And I think right now Lenny Hansen's not seeing the bigger picture. He understands, he wants to make sure he's on that podium with William Chandler right behind him as they make their way down the start-finish straight. And Chandler giving Lenny a bit of a push along there with a bump draft. As they come down towards turn 1, they can get away with it on the straights here. These MX-5s are very lightweight, so if we only want to bump draft on a completely straight run of tarmac, and doing exactly that, Chandler's able to make sure that Hansen's right back there with Sims, and in turn he's brought along as Daniel Moffat and Mav Gardner start to get a bit close to this, particularly Daniel Moffat, who started 5th in the AM class, and we're right now one of our top 3 in the AM Championship coming into this round. It's not quite gone the way he wanted it to in qualifying, and again, it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. And one driver who will definitely be trying to embody that mentality will be none other than William Chandler. And well, speaking of what happened to William, here's a replay of his spin at the AMG Arena. Now this was Chandler coming down to the braking zone. The 57 was behind him at the time. Was there a tap? Oh, goodness me. I don't think there was. I think Chandler's made a mistake there, and he's reversed the car onto the grass as a result of the spin to get it off the race line as soon as possible. Now the 57 that was right behind him, that was the car of Andrew Pike. Can we get an on board with Andrew Pike with regards to that instant? The answer is yes, we can, and here it is. So under braking, Chandler goes a bit deep. The camera angle would suggest there perhaps was contact. It's very hard to tell, although Pike, to be fair, just carrying on through. And well, if Andrew had made the contact, given the level of sportsmanship he normally shows, I would imagine he would have backed off a step to side there. So I think there was not contact, although, oh my good lord, there was some subsequent contact there between himself and the iRacing Esports machine and Nick Clibbins. They got their elbows out, no doubt about it, and Pike in the end coming the worst off between the two of them. So it's a good thing we held on to the replay there, because Nick Clibbins getting his elbows out versus good old friend and rival, and we absolutely love to see that as we come back to your live racing. It's a good thing we do as well, because we have only got now 2.5 minutes left, and Jack Southfield is running away with this right now at the front of the field. He's 2.1 seconds clear, and well, he has got this lap plus most likely at least one more, if not 2 more. Right now, all he needs to do is keep it together, as it's looking to be a potential 1, 2, 3 here for the Sim Racing Collective Esports, with Southwood, Davidson and Sharp all part of the outfit. And Francesco Petoli, meanwhile, in 4th place, wants to try and squeeze his way onto that podium. But what can he do, the Italian driver, to beat the 3 Britons? That's the question. And the answer is, he's just got to be a bit relentless here. And then again, he might be thinking the bigger picture, which is the feature race is coming up, and if he finishes this one in 4th, he will be starting in 7th place of the feature race ahead of all 3 of the TSRC drivers. So therefore, there's always a little bit of game management to play here when it comes to transition from the sprint to the feature. However, one driver who will not have that luxury is Miles Owens as he makes his way in towards turn number 7. We ride on board, look back from the rear of the roll cage here, the Sim Race Sweden machine, and we're powering the way upwards right now. Here comes Alan McCain looking for a potential move here as they head through the fast right-hander of Ad Van Bogen, and in towards the chicane they come. Double draft there for the crack to race and Bart Raven, and Raven right now trying to go around the outside. Is he going to be able to make the move? The answer is no, and instead McCain is held out there on the outside as a brilliant bit of driving there from Miles Owens forces his way back right into that mixture as they head up towards turn number 11, and we're coming on through here. This will be the final lap of racing in the sprint race. We will get a 9th and final tour of the circuit in, and right now Miles Owens will have to do it one more time as now Raven and McCain are side by by side here down the start-finish straight. Liam Giles is right on the back of them. Giles, who started in 10th place, he's made up a couple of places. He'd like to make another 2 here. He fancies his opportunities. Will he be able to go for it? Well, Raven covers the middle of the road. Giles thinks about it, but realises there's no way to that inside because Raven's going to cover it off. Car around there. Hold up a second. That is Kieran Sharp, who's had a turn for the worst. The man who was telling me only moments before we went racing, albeit before we went live with the broadcast as well, that he needed to find time to practice, and he found a lot of time in practicing. Well, certainly that practice has not made perfect because he's gone around there, but I'm not quite sure how he's ended up on that journey. Albeit won't be able to get the replay now. We're going to stay transfixed to the racing action to the very end. And as all these drivers continue to push each other onwards, well, right now Bart Raven still ahead of Liam Giles, but Alan McCain proving to be absolutely stubborn. Further back, let's not forget about Am drivers enjoying a good run. That's Matt Smith, who's taking a run all the way around the outside of the circuit, plus plenty more. But this is absolute chaos here in the fight for 7th place in the Am class, always 24th overall, with Thomas Martin having the unenviable job of trying to keep the best part of 5 Am drivers behind him, including Jonas Wenzel, Carrillo Turan, David Long, and Matt Smith. All bit too wide comes Wenzel and Turan here. Turan trying to go all the way around the outside. He's going to be brave. He's got to be confident, but the problem is he runs out of road, and as a result he can't quite get the power down the circumference of the road, forces him to fall backwards, but a good attempt there, and David Long is now looking for an opportunity to get involved. But from them, ladies and gentlemen, we must come back to the front of the field because the checker flag waves, and on his debut, Jack Southfield will take victory here in Germany for the first race of the day. He is your sprint winner overall, and in the pro class ahead of Tom Davidson, who finishes second, and it's not a 1-2-3 for TSRC, who is Francesco Pettelin, disrupts the party on the podium, and the Italian there taking a brilliant run to 3rd place. Alan McCain, he'll come on home here in 4th, the Irishman. A great job from him ahead of Bart Raven. William Giles and Kieran Sharp completing your top 7. And Nick Clemens finishes 8th ahead of Miles Owens. And then it'll be Kieran O'Reilly who takes home 10th place, just ahead of Jamie Nuttall. But in the Am class, Martin Foster takes the first Am victory of the day there, and what a job from him, finally making his way to the top step of the podium ahead of Lenny Hansen, who takes his first podium of the season. And 3rd place, it's another podium for Daniel Moffat in the Am class, as Bradley Horsnell makes his way to a stop, and indeed all the drivers coming to the end of their respective races. But goodness me, ladies and gentlemen, what a race, as Luke Smith will prove to be the final finisher on the lead lap here in 32nd, with Marlon Schwab a lap down the 33rd of our runners. But all of our starters finish in this race to some degree under their own steam. Well, Luke Smith, to be fair, still getting himself quite comfortable with the MX-5, and that was our first race of the day here. But as we do have a 3-minute breather before we do go to the grid for our second race, let's walk you back through those provisional race results subject to any stewards' inquiries, and well, here they are, ladies and gentlemen, from the sprint race at the Nürburgring Sprint Tracker in round number 2 of the Sim Racing Collective MX-5 Championship, brought to you on iRacing for 2025. And as we saw, Jack Southfield, he may not have started with the intention of winning, but he definitely in the end took that victory, at least based on his qualifying position. He roared his way on through, and on his debut, the Sim Racing Collective esports driver leading home a 1-2 ahead of teammate Tom Davidson, who was 2 seconds behind. Francesco Pettelin finished in 3rd there for Absolute Motorsport Ace, a brilliant effort from the Italian driver, did everything right towards the end of the race in order to make sure he was on that podium. And we did not quite know what happened between the top 3 and Kieran Sharp, who was looking to try and make it a 1-2-3 for TSRC Esports, but he did have that spin at turn 1. I'm sure we'll get an update from him after the racing today. Alan McCain took 4th place, iRacing Esports there, in a bitter battle between himself, Bart Raven, Liam Giles and Kieran Sharp, with the 2 cracked racing drivers finishing together just ahead of the TSRC Esports driver. And it was only 8 tenths further back. You've got Nick Clemens of iRacing Esports, who did well to fend off the charges of Miles Owens for Sim Race Sweden and Kieran O'Reilly for MSA Racing. It was the first 7 attempts back. You had best of the rest in 11th, Jamie Nuttall for cracked racing. We didn't get to see as much as we would have liked from him, given the fact he did have that altercation into turn number 1 that sent him all the way around the wrong way. And in the end, well, now he's going to be starting from just outside the top 10 reverse grid for race number 2. And he knows he's got an absolute mountain to climb. But if anybody can do it, he can. In 12th, it was Andrew Pike ahead of Sam Smith, with Clive Bourne round off the run of pros in 14th for Big Pig Racing by VRS. And then you came to your AM winner. Well done to him, Martin Foster for RPMS Sim Sport. And whilst the win may have eluded him at Okayama, well, win has not eluded him this time out, and he'll be absolutely pleased with that. Behind him, it was 2nd place AM driver Lenny Hansen, bottle job racing, his first podium on the board, a brilliant one at that, 2 attempts ahead of William Chandler. The cracked racing driver being followed up by 3rd place AM driver Daniel Moffat, who continues his run of podiums for this season. Outside the top 18, there are plenty more finishers. Let's talk about them. And we did have in 19th Bradley Horsnell ahead of Martin Rendell, the first AM driver off of the podium. The Privateer, who was 20th, ahead of Craig Twardock in 21st, and then Gav Ronda round off your AM top 5 in 22nd. Behind the Planet Express machine, it was Thomas Martin 23rd, with Janos Wenzel recovering well to 24th despite his calamity at the AMG Arena, and then it was David Long who round off your top 25 ahead of Mav Gardner, Corelio Turan and Matt Smith, and a brilliant four-way fight between those AM drivers. Let's not exclude Mark Pizer from that. He was in it for a good portion of time, ahead of Valerio Tedeschi, who completed your top 30. There was Paul Sims and Luke Smith, who completed your finishes on the lead lap. Paul Sims having a nightmare into his race after a great start, and then Marlon Schwab a lap down there in 33rd place. That's a rundown of the results from race number 1, ladies and gentlemen. But you know what time it is? It's time for us to head to the grid for race number 2. It's time for the 30-minute feature. So the drivers make the way onto the grid, and this is how they'll line up for our second and final race of the day here in round number 2 of the championship. It's Kieran O'Reilly who takes a reverse grid pole position with a top 10 inversion for MSA Racing, and well done to him, he's played it exactly right. He'll be joined on that front row of the grid by Miles Owens for Sim Race Sweden. Behind them on row number 2, it's going to be Nick Clemens for iRacing Esports and Kieran Sharp for the Sim Racing Collective Esports, who'll be licking his lips and thinking, right, now here's my prime time to take a win. If not, Liam Giles will feel the same for Cracked Racing, starting 5th ahead of teammate Bart Raven. Then from the Dutchman, it's the Irishman of Alan McCain for iRacing Esports ahead of Francesco Petalin, with the Absolute Motorsport ace-lift driver having to fend off the charges of the Sim Racing Collective Esports pair of Tom Davidson and Race 1 winner Jack Southfield. Jamie Nuttall begins this one best rest in a length for Cracked Racing. Keep your eyes out for him because he will be absolutely looking to carve his way through the field after the disappointment of the first race of the day. Andrew Pike will be starting 12th alongside him for the Sim Racing Collective Esports. And on row number 7, it's going to be Sam Smith for iRacing Esports ahead of Big Pig Racing by VRS's Clive Bourne. In 15th, it's Martin Foss there, who starts off your AM pole sitter looking to make it back-to-back AM wins for RPMS Simsport. However, he'll have the company of Lenny Hansen alongside, the driver who races with one leg, as we've been reminded there by Defian in the YouTube chat. I do need to have a chat with Lenny with regards to the specifics around that. But the Bottle Job Racing driver, they're doing a brilliant job and now looking to move forward, as will William Chandler, who starts 17th behind him for Cracked Racing, with Daniel Moffat, the third of the AM drivers, begin this one 18th on the grid. Bradley Horsnell and Martin Rendell, they round off your top 20, the two privateers, ahead of MSA Racing's Craig Twardock. And well, after that spin at Vidal on the open lap in race number 1, anything from here is an upward improvement, he'll feel. But he'll be in the company of Gareth Ronda, the 5th place AM driver, and then behind the privateer will be Shadow Drager Racing's Thomas Martin and Janos Wenzel, who starts 24th. Keep your eyes out for him as well, because he was looking very fast until it all went backwards in the opening few laps of the sprint. We then do have on row number 13, David Long for La Brocca Racing Team and Mav Garner for the Sim Racing Collective Esports, the 805 driver there, looking confident, albeit he's going to have to fend off the attacks of Kirio Turan. And Matt Smith, with the Cracked Racing driver there, finishing very far down the order despite all the battling he put on. Mark Peza starts 29th, and Valerio Tedeschi rounds off your top 30. And behind the privateers, it's the fellow privateer of Paul Sims, who's got nothing to lose in this one, the AM Championship leader, ahead of Luke Smith at FD Racing. And last but not least, 33rd on the grid, it's DLR FPT's Marlon Schwab, who'll be hoping for a much happier race this time round compared to race number 1. So 33 starters once again, ladies and gentlemen, they're all almost set and ready to go for the second and final time here today. But as they all get themselves nice and comfortable on this grid, Kieran O'Reilly, of course, will know the challenge that's in front of him is a run towards turn number 1. And Miles Owens, the Sim Race Sweden driver, will be right there with him, looking to try and steal away that lead. But who of these two is going to outrun the other towards the opening corner? It's time to find out. It's time for race number 2. The revs rise and the red lights go on. There's going to be 5 red lights. And it's lights down, away we go. We are racing once again here at the Nürburgring Sprint Tracker. And as they roar the way down, Kieran O'Reilly getting a monstrous start. But look at Nick Clemens, who started third on this grid. He's launched his way up alongside already Miles Owens. And as they make their way into the braking zone, he's going to try and go around the outside. Owens trying to fend him off there on the inside to outside line. But as they all come down through the corner, great start from all the drivers here. You can see Craig Dards up there as somebody goes round. The 285 goes sideways. Couldn't quite see who it was with him, however. And well, all these drivers guys settling down now, and as they do, I think that was David Long getting caught up there as well with Marlon Schwab, and it is a difficult start for many. But meanwhile, the further down the order, it does seem to be commiserations. Kieran Sharp, meanwhile, is already up into 3rd place. He's had a monster launch off the line, and as they all come down, the top 3 are all clear of each other. But meanwhile, Miles Owens here trying to put the cork in the bottle, and as he comes down through turn number 5, Liam Giles goes all the way around the outside, but to no avail there, as Owens knows exactly how far he can push his rival out. In turn number 6 and 7 now, things will potentially calm down for a brief moment, and they'll want to play the game and follow the leader. As always, we'll start to see the field segregate before they've even done a single lap. Oh, goodness me, that is a nightmare moment further back. That's a chaos there. Lenny Hansen's gone around, lost his front bumper, and he's been collected there with the number 58, and in fact, I think that's the 58. Yes, it is Bradley Horsenow, so it's all gone wrong between them. But where it's gone wrong again in the AM class, it's going right in the Pro class here as they head in towards the Vidal chicane for the first time under braking. Will anybody dare to lunge? The answer is no, they won't. They'll all follow the way on through. It's Long Snake Trainer cars here, and leading AM driver Martin Foster, well, he's put a couple of pros between himself and the rest of the AM field, because that's Clive Bourne, William Chandler and Craig Tardock all behind us. Tardock, they're looking up the inside of Chandler into the final corner. That's an opportunity he's not going to waste, and Craig there absolutely nailing it on the attack as they now head down towards turn number 1. But as they roar the way down, will it be Tardock or will it be Chandler? Well, in theory, Chandler should get back ahead here because he's got the toe and Tardock has not. However, I can imagine that right now the 200 driver will be very eager to prove otherwise under braking, but immediately look at that from Chandler. That is a message being stated there from William Chandler, and I think there might have been an expletive there, which is, Craig, I need you to go away. That's the polite way he's saying it, and absolutely carved the car to the inside. That was also to put some pressure on Clive Bourne, the Cadbury Cream Egg machine, but the main point of that from Chandler was to say to Tardock, you're not going for the move. But Tardock does not get the memo and goes up the inside here into turn number 3. They're still side by side as they exit on out. It's 2 by 2 in the formation here, and will Martin Foster lead and drives at the head of this quartet, trying to pinch them all together and get them to fight each other. But here comes Bourne up the inside of Foster in towards the hairpin. He's not going to be able to quite find it, or is he? Yes, he will, because Bourne there sees that Foster's gone deep, and Foster's not going to get that back anytime soon unless he goes for a lunge here in towards turn number 6. He will do so, and Bourne here just holding that outside line. We'll carry all the momentum around, uses a bit of the runoff curb in there in order to make it work. But just in front of them, oh my good lord, that is Bart Raven. Raven up into the air, and well, the Carpenters 2 wheels for a brief moment, and in contact with, I believe, Alan McCain. Smoke coming out the back of the iRacing Sports machine. They both have to come in together, and it's all gone very, very wrong. And I believe, ladies and gentlemen, with that, we have had the deployment of the safety car. So we will and see the safety car out at least for 2 laps here, as that was an absolute nightmare moment there for multiple drivers. And well done to everyone for making sure that did not end up becoming worse than it already was. But a lot of damage on those cars indeed, quite a bit of debris across the circuit, and understandably that's why the safety car has come out here as per the automated iRacing stewarding system. But as our leaders make the way on down, we can recap after 2 laps where everybody stands in this 30-minute race. Kieran O'Reilly is your leader currently, having started on pole position. He's done a good job. Oh goodness me, I think O'Reilly coming up down the start straight a bit too quick for the safety car there, as it does leave the pit lane or thereabouts. But O'Reilly almost getting caught out and almost causing a traffic jam under braking there. But thankfully everybody are aware that he had to slam on the brakes, so that way he did not overtake the safety car and would have received a hefty penalty as a result of that, and they've all survived that. But definitely I think there's going to be a few words between the drivers after that one as to how to better obey the safety car procedure. But Kieran O'Reilly in the end, your leader currently, ahead of Nick Clibbins and Kieran Sharp. That's your top 3. There's Liam Giles in 4th place, ahead of Miles Owens, with Francesco Pettelin in 6th. Tom Davidson is 7th, ahead of Jamie Nuttall, followed by Jack Salford and Andrew Pike. That is your top 10. Best rest in 11th is Sam Smith, ahead of Clive Bourne, with Craig Twardock and William Chandler complete your top 14 of all pros. And well, then there is Mav Gardner in 14th place, leading AM driver. Now the big question I've got to ask here is, what on earth has happened to the man who was leading AM? And well, that was Martin Foster. He's had to come into the pit lane for repair work. We've got a lot to try and understand, but Mav Gardner has got the rest of the AM field right behind him, including Thomas Martin and Daniel Moffat, who are your top 3 AMs, with Paul Sims, who started from practically the back of the grid, already up into 18th place and 4th in AM, and Mark Poser is on course potentially for his best result of the season here as the South African driver, 5th in AM currently, 19th on the road. But as the safety car heads on around, I believe the safety car lights are staying on, for at least for now. Yes, they are. It has to do 2 laps at least here, so it gives us an opportunity to take a look back at some of the major moments from the opening lap of the race. And we begin then, ladies and gentlemen, with what happened to Martin Rendell on lap number 1. Now this was Martin making his way down into the braking zone here. He was in the pinch here and, well, collected one way then. The other is Bish, Bash and Bosch, and it all went round there for the 33 driver with the 285 on the side there, just to be confusing with the door number, and will knock side to side, however, able to get away with it. I thought it was far worse than it was, but thankfully just a knock from left to right. We then had this happen to Matt Smith only moments later, and this was heading down through turn number 1, and I believe he's going to see what happens to Rendell, and he's going to take to an escape road there. Indeed does a good job. Frilio Turan did the same. We then had this a little bit later on lap number 1 for Gareth Ronda, and, well, Ronda had already got some damage. In fact, the bonnet of that car up in the air. What on earth had happened to him? Well, either way, the Play Express car absolutely wounded, had to go straight on there and tow to the pit lane. So that's what happened to Matt Ronda. And then this happened to Lenny Hansen as he made his way in towards turn number 6. And, well, checking up there. Well, not quite sure what's happened, but that caused a bit of a check-up moment. It went on the brakes way too soon. Oh, goodness me. And a big shunt to the side of the car there from the number 58. And, well, that was Brady Horsenall completely misanticipating the situation for Horsenall. This was from his perspective as we ride on board and watch. You're going to see Hansen in the end. It's a very odd one, that. Hansen gets turned, can't quite discern who it was, and Horsenall comes through, doesn't see it coming, and suddenly ends up on 2 wheels and into the stratosphere. But with that, we also had this happen only moments later to David Long on lap number 2. And, well, this was Long making his way around for Ladbrake Racing Team. Rear of the car snaps loose for the AMG Arena, snaps loose again, snaps loose a 3rd time, and eventually makes a brief impact with the tyre barrier there. Well attempted by David Long to try and get it back together with a 977 driver in the end, fighting a car that just did not want to be tamed. When they had this for Bart Raven on lap number 2, the instance came thick and fast, albeit we are behind the safety car at the moment, so we're not missing racing action, ladies and gentlemen, I can assure you. But Raven made his way through, rear of the car, let go there into Bilstein, and, well, with that, oh, goodness me, and that explains what happened there with the fact that comes straight into the side of Bart Raven's car was the iRacing SimSport machine of Alan McCain. The iRacing eSports car just came charging into the scene of the incident and did not know what to do. And to give you an idea of how that happened, we ride on board here with the Irishman. He's going to see Raven's gone sideways, or some smoke's gone up. He won't have known where Raven was because he was on the outside. He would have been blindsided by the cars on his inside. So McCain went through the corner. He couldn't see any yellow flags either, given the incident only just happened, and McCain in the end just driving straight into the scene of the incident and having no way to react. And then with all that, it has been a very calamitous opening couple of laps. And one of the big questions we also have to ask ourselves is what happened to Martin Foster? And, well, this was Martin Foster at the back of the pack behind the safety car. And, well, I think, ladies and gentlemen, we're not going to get a true story as to what happened. Here's a quick look back. Do we get anything from Martin Foster? No, we do not. So it seems as though we've been deprived of an explanation as to what happened to the RPMS SimSport machine. But in good time as well, we come back, and I believe we are still behind the safety car still. We are, in fact, going a 3rd lap behind the safety car. So we are going to try and find out what happened to Martin Foster, because the safety car... Well, the lights are gone off the safety car, so we will be going green flag racing at the end of the next lap. So we are getting a 3rd safety car lap. We thought it might have been terminated after 2, but I believe some extra time has been given to enable drivers who have made their way out the pit lane, including Lenny Hansen and Bradley Horsenall, enable them to have the opportunity to catch up to the field. So give us a brief moment, ladies and gentlemen. We might be able to find out what exactly happened to Foster. We are just trying to see if we've got any footage available. But everyone right now calling on down. And, well, as they do, Luke Smith has had to come into the pit lane due to something that's gone wrong with his car. So it does seem as though a few drivers having a few nightmare moments. And I wonder whether for Foster, whether that footage we started to pick up before we came back to the race, might have had an explanation to it. Well, let's take a look back again at Martin Foster. So this was him leaving turn number 7. Car jinx one way, goes straight on. Now, this was, I believe... with the safety car. I think Foster's had an impact. Hold up. Looking at that car, that front left suspension doesn't look right. He's clipped something. He's clipped something. He's not gone off the road. He's been in contact with either a driver or a wall of some description. Whether he's been in contact with a wall, I'd love to know where. But Foster has been in contact, and he's got a damaged front left suspension. That explains why he's gone all the way down the order. He's had contact with something, and it's broken the front axle of the car. So the 44's had to come on in, and that has set him all the way back down the order. So that's not the way Foster's wanted it to go whatsoever. And we're not quite sure how it's happened, ladies and gentlemen. We can tell you it has happened. So at least we've caught that. But that is a surprise and not a welcome one to be sure, because Foster was looking very much on course for leading the AM class in this one. And, well, I think they're Mr. Rich trying to clarify in the YouTube chat. And, of course, if you guys and girls do know or are aware or can suggest what may have happened, we definitely appreciate it. But believes it may have been contact with Raven, as in Bart Raven. So it might have been a successive contacts there. We did see, of course, the Alan McCain into Bart Raven contact, but it might have been the initial contact that sent Raven on his journey. Alternatively, it was a tap contact. Indeed, it might have been a brushing contact through that corner. Well, as we come back to your live pictures, it's to Kieran O'Reilly to dictate the pace now, ladies and gentlemen, as he makes his way behind the safety car but pulls back. You'll notice there the dashboard in the bottom right corner of your screen tells you he's maintaining a relatively low speed. He's building a little bit, but he gets to control the restart. Safety car's into the pit lane, and it's for Kieran O'Reilly to take us to green flag racing. And now to the final corner he goes. We are green flag racing once again, ladies and gentlemen, with the remaining 19 minutes plus the final lap of this race here as they roar the way down the start-finish straight. And Kieran O'Reilly right now will absolutely trying to nail the restart, but it doesn't quite work out as they head down towards turn number 1. And in fact there you can see that Nick Clemens immediately on the offensive here, looks for the opportunity. Can he find it? And the answer is yes, no, maybe. He tries to go around the outside and then take the inside into turn number 2. It's going to be a good attempt as he comes on through there, and I think the RS Esports driver is going to absolutely nail it, take the lead this race. All the field is safely on through the opening couple of corners, and understandably I think a little bit of caution being demonstrated, as no caution there if your name's Jack Southfield completely tries to carve his way past teammate Andrew Pike and does so, coming down for the AMG Arena. And Southfield right now has definitely got the bit between his teeth, and if anything I think right now he's in such a hurry you would think he's left the stove on at home for the way he's trying to make places up. Coming down for the corner, that's Sam Smith going sideways, he's ejected out, and Sam Smith there with contact, well I believe that's Craig Tardock. I'm not quite 100% certain on that one, but they were in close proximity. But Sam Smith there being pushed down the order, but carries on. Looks so the iRacing Esports car is able to push onwards, as meanwhile that's 2 by 2 coming in towards Bilstein, and that is Martin Rendell in the end, trying to look for a move around the outside of Mark Pizer, but it's not going to quite work out as Marlon Schwab, the pro in amongst the AMs, tries to make his way up the order as quickly as he can as well. A lot of drivers are out of position here if they're pros, and well, this is only going to add to even more intrigue as there's damage on the car there for Martin Rendell. You can see that in the light blue machine, absolutely bruised on the front of the car, but breaks about the inside there and forces the issue versus Pizer and Corelio Turan. And Turan is still right behind him as the privateer, and looking for an opportunity to try and get involved there for what will be 5th place in the AM class. And a much happier day today for Corelio compared to Okayama, where he had a lot of pace at his fingertips for a top 5 finish, but instance cost him in the sprint race, and then in the feature race it really was about damage limitation at that point. Meanwhile, speaking of damage limitation here, Mav Gardner won't be thinking that today after what happened last time as he makes his way down. Car going very slowly there, and that is the Cadbury Cream Egg machine of Clive Bourne that is, going to be Bourne having to take to the escape road there. I think he's got a problem with the car. The Big Pig Racing driver making his way on through it, unless, no, he had to slow down to serve there. I've just noticed that at the corner of my eye. So he was serving a slowdown and was struggling to burn the slowdown penalty, and he finally served it, but he picked up a smaller one as a result of cutting his way over the apex grass of turn number 1. Well, how about that for Clive Bourne? He managed to get it done in the end, but what I was trying to say is that Mav Gardner for Sim Racing Collective Esports leading the AM class and looking to try and break away from Daniel Moffat, with Sam Smith interrupting the flow of AM drives because behind him is Thomas Martin, the 3rd place AM. Paul Sims on a charge, albeit he's got Marlon Schwab right behind him. Schwab looking one way, then the other, and we're under braking there. No way through versus Paul Sims, who, to be fair, he may be an AM driver, but he's got the defensive capabilities of a pro, and we're doing everything right at the moment, as Martin, meanwhile, runs a little bit deep there coming for Bilstein, and the Shadow Drager Racing driver, well, he's going to be under pressure. Sims going to look up the inside of him here, coming for Advan Bogan. Well, it's going to be too wide at the apex. Sims has got the overspeed, but now he's had to bleed a little bit of speed there for a tighter run, so onto the brakes they come, and, well, Thomas Martin, in the end, has to settle. Falling back in behind, gets it all wrong under braking there, and that's going to enable Schwab to go around the outside of him, and then it's going to Martin Rendell queuing up, and here comes Mark Pizer. They're all in a big queue here, all swapping places, and it's like they're exchanging stocks, ladies and gentlemen, right now, as if it's going out of style, but Pizer goes very wide there in the all-black machine, and we're coming onto the start-finish straight. Fantastic racing as we get ready to move into the second half of the race distance. Clive Ball on the outside, then the Cadbury Cream Egg Machine. He's looking to make it 3 wide. That's brave on that outside line on the white racing strip, plus also the grass to go with. He's ejected out there. Contact between himself and Pizer. That's going to send him to the runoff area, and I think Bourne realising too late that the circuit does taper to the right, and he's going to run out of tarmac to operate with, so he wanted to come across, but unfortunately he had cars there, so in the end it went for a move that wasn't going to quite work. Meanwhile, speaking of move, oh no, it's almost gone wrong. He collects it again, though. Absolute merciful ace is Francesco Petterling. He loses 3 places to the price of 1 loose rear end, but that's absolutely brilliantly controlled, as meanwhile Andrew Pike and Craig Tardock now, well, they're trying to run this pack on through, and Tardock in particular under a lot of pressure from Southfield and William Chandler. He's got Matt Gardner right behind him as they head in towards turn number 6. And well, for Tardock, at this point he'll be thinking to himself, what can I do to make sure that Southfield and Chandler can't get him through? Well, the answer is keep on doing what you're doing, Craig, because you're looking very defensively solid at the moment as we look back from the rear of the MSA racing machine, and we can see how close it is between these drivers as he charges his way onwards. Well, for Southfield right now, he's being pushed on a little bit by Chandler there. Chandler trying to help out with a bit of a bump drive, trying to disrupt Tardock's momentum. In towards Vidal they go, and into that sharp low-speed chicane. There's going to be no change at the moment, although Tardock goes a little bit deep under braking, but he brings it back together just about. And we're 1.2 seconds to Andrew Pike in front. Tardock is losing the toe of the cars in front of him, so now he's going to have to do things under his own momentum. And that is where things get very difficult indeed as he makes his way onto his 9th tour of the circuit. And indeed, we now trip away into the second half of the race distance. On the start finish straight, here comes Southfield looking to the inside. Tardock covers off the inside as quickly as he possibly can. So now Southfield's going to go all the way around the outside, and he says, fine, I'll do it the difficult way. Brake disc line red hot there, bit of contact between the two of them, and will Tardock right now making himself so wide he's completely occupying all the road, albeit fairly, and will Southfield here really being put under pressure to try and find his way through. Southfield may have been your runaway winner in race number 1, but in this one he's not going to run away with it. Tardock has already proven that point. Southfield on the inside here, but it's a switch back from a left into right, and Tardock again holding on and indeed gripping onto this for dear life as Southfield looks one way than the other, and Tardock says, let me help you make a decision here. I'm holding that inside line, but Southfield cuts back to the inside. It gets very, very late on the brakes between the two of them, and in the end, playing a game of guesses, well, Tardock is able to outguess his rival just about, but Southfield back up the inside again. He refuses to budge. There's contact between the two of them. It sends Southfield sideways, and Tardock right now, I don't know how he didn't go around. I think Southfield there trying to poke his nose in, and Tardock said, try it, I dare you. And well, that's exactly what happens when you do try to poke your nose in versus Craig Tardock. He'll just simply take your nose off the cart and make sure you're not going to find your way through. But heading up towards now turn number 11, well, as they head in towards the braking zone for 9 and 10 first. If Southfield rubbing paint with him, this is getting personal between the two. They exchange blows there, and well, Southfield goes straight on. Tardock would argue that he cut the corner, and well, he's picked up a slowdown for it as Southfield and William Chandler the same. So they're going to have to serve that of the two of them, and well, Matt Gardner in all of this, he's going to be looking at this and thinking, I just want to leave the M-Class guys. Can you let me through? Albeit he's got Francesco Petterling and Sam Smith right behind him. This is getting very, very messy as they all look to serve down slow downs, but Matt Gardner, as he makes one down, well, he tucks in behind William Chandler there, I think realising in time that he has got a slow down to serve as Chandler, but he picks up a nice toe and the inside line there for good measure as Petterling comes back across. Sam Smith sees it and puts the brakes on just a little bit earlier than originally planned, but going deep is Matt Gardner, and well, as he brings himself back on, it is all over the shop here, and we'll set, in fact, that's Southfield going deep, not Matt Gardner, my apologies. Southfield drops all the way down to 12th place after running deep into the braking zone for turn number 1, so his race is going from good to bad to backwards here, as whilst all that's happening at the very front of the field, because there is action at the front as well as in the mid-pack, Kieran Sharp leads this race, currently ahead of Nick Clemens, with Kieran O'Reilly in the battle of two. Kieran, separated by Nick, sits in third. As I head in towards turn number 6, well, right now it does seem as though it's a bit more peaceful inside this top 7 by comparison with the rest of the field, and I can imagine it's only peaceful for as long as they want it to be, and I suspect we will see quite an exchange between all these drivers a little bit later on as they roar the way onwards, and they are all definitely giving it everything right now in order to look on top form. But we will see what could happen as they make their way deeper and deeper into the race distance, because of course tyre life is gradually actually becoming a bigger and bigger factor here for our drivers as they make their way on around. And we saw it at Okayama in the fact the first 20 minutes you can really push the tyre of this MX-5 to the limit. However, after 20 minutes, if you do that, you've suddenly got very little compound left for the remainder of the race distance, and that is where tyre management skills are going to come in handy. So if your name is Miles Owens, for example, the Sim Race Sweden driver, yes, he may be at the very back of this group of 7 cars. However, do not rule him out, because if he's protecting the tyres, he may very gradually find himself gaining pace in the final 5 minutes and able to look for an opportunity or two. But Andrew Pike a bit further behind, 2.2 seconds off, and it's Craig Twardock right now who leads the rest of the field, as that's 3 wide in the middle. That is going to be Sam Smith. It gets very close towards the apex, but they all give each other space. Brilliant racing. William Chandler there on that inside line. 9, he had nowhere to go. He'd have to back off, as otherwise he'd lose the nose of the car. And the 43 driver there is not going to get into trouble with the stewards for that one, as Martin Schwab, meanwhile, watches this from behind and thinks to himself, okay, how exactly do I get involved? Well, for Martin Schwab, what he's got to do is just be clever with this and take his time, because the DLR FP1 driver, well, as he makes his way on out at the moment, the one thing he's got to keep in mind is he started all the way from the very back of the field. So to have made his way from 33rd to 15th, that is an achievement. The safety car has aided him a little bit in that perhaps, but the point stands that he's had to have the commitment and perseverance to get here, and now he's got to try and find his way into the top 10 of the pros if he can. He's currently the 14th of the pro drivers, and he'll want to pick up some more points if possible. But in the long snake train here, it's about picking the time right to go for a move, because otherwise you disrupt the train and suddenly you lose the slipstream of all the cars in front. We talk about it time and time again, but it's important because of the fact this pack-based racing, when you do have a long straight, such as the run up here through Advan Bogen in towards Vidal, well, that straight can really separate the field out when you don't have a draft versus when you do have it. And that's why you'll notice these drivers, they're very hesitant about looking for a dive unless they absolutely know they're not going to lose the toe of the car in front of them in the long line. But Schwab right now giving us an idea of what it's like to run at the back of the train, as he keeps an eye on the brake lights there of the car in front of William Chandler, and these 2 pro drivers looking to try and move ahead of the leading AM driver, Mav Gardner. There goes none other than Chandler looking up the inside. Gardner there still holding that outside line as it's getting very twitchy in front between several drivers. But that's going to be Chandler looking up the inside, then under brake, and it's just in front of them. It's going to be Southfield Petalin and also Smith all coming together. And well, 3 by 3 they come, but Schwab right now just waiting his turn here at the back of this long line of cars. But through the AMG Arena they go, and as they do, will Jack Southfield holding off Sam Smith and Francesco Petalin. Smith's on the inside of Petalin, who gives him all the space. Petalin decides to cut back in. Mav Gardner still refusing to budge versus William Chandler. He really is proven to be an absolute wide AM driver at that. Oh my goodness, that's not right. As that's Francesco Petalin looking all the way at the inside of Smith, who came across at the same time. Both drivers would argue they did the right thing and the other did the wrong thing, but I think both of them there sharing the same brain cell at that point, and that's not an insult. They were sharing the same fault, which was we both want to be on the inside. But when both drivers think they want to be on the inside at the same time, and they both think that they're just clear of the other when they're not, that is when it gets very, very tight between them. And in the end, well, Francesco Petalin backing out there on the grass, and Sam Smith also having to do the same on the tarmac. I'm amazed that didn't come to worse blows. But to be fair, that goes to show you the car control that they both have as they head up towards the chicane. I can imagine Petalin right now, his patience might be running a little bit dry, and well, as his patience runs out, understandably he wants to get this move done. Given his performances in round number 1, he'll be hoping for a bit more. But Craig Twardock, meanwhile, with Jack Southfield up his inside, the 2 going on through the final corner. Well, it's not for the final time, they've still got 7 minutes to go, and here they go down the start-finish straight, and Twardock this time finds himself on the outside of Southfield. Southfield's finally got to the inside heading down the start-finish line, and here is Sam Smith with him. So Twardock, what can he do now is the question. He's proven absolutely obstinate. Smith there backs off, swings to the outside for Petalin. Twardock's going to try and go all the way around the outside here at the Yokohama hairpin, and well, he's not going to quite make it work, as Smith meanwhile still has Petalin knocking on his door left, right and centre. Petalin there gives him the space, recognises that they can't afford to make contact. Down the hill they come in towards turn number 3, and we'll line astern this time around. Looking a bit further back, Martin Rendell, well, the number 33 driver here in The 285 livery machine, the privateer, looking to try and get everything up to speed here versus Mark Peza. And he goes round, loses the rear of the car. That's unfortunate for Martin. Manages to get it off the road, and now we'll reverse it back onto the tarmac, albeit off the racing line, and get it going. But it will be Mark Peza who'll feel a bit safe with regards to that. He'll feel as though he's now a bit more comfortable. As, hold up a second, that is Tom Davidson going very slowly. What's happened to Tom Davidson? He's had a bit of drama. Carillo Turan is fighting with Alan McCain, meanwhile a bit further back, as Alan McCain, in fact, is really struggling to make his way up through the order. But the privateer hitting the 101, definitely trying to put a 101 over the pro driver, but he's not going to quite do so, and instead he's going to be put behind Alan McCain, and he'll have Thomas Martin and Martin Foster getting a little bit closer, as we do see the long run. And remember, Martin Foster for RPMS Simsport, looking to try and improve, given the fact it all went wrong at the start of this race. And you'll be hoping for a lot more by the end of it, but we will have to wait and see what he's able to achieve. Under braking there, those brake discs starting to glow red hot. That's also going to be a factor. The brakes will be starting to feel a little bit spongy if they've been abusing the brake pedal all the way over the race distance. But as Foster looks at the inside there of Martin, thinks about it, thinks of going for a lunge, because Martin does take a much wider entry into the Hyundai N-Curve, but to no avail. As meanwhile, Twardot battling with none other than Marlin Schwab in towards turn 1 and out of it. Schwab now up into 10th place here, and well, the DLR FP1 driver doing a phenomenal job of absolutely attacking for 10th, albeit Twardot gets it back off of him. Understandably here, it is nip and tuck between these two with 5 minutes left on the clock, and William Chandler, meanwhile, just looks at this and thinks, how do I get involved? And the answer is, he needs to stick his nose in there somewhere, but he's got to time it right. So we've seen what happens when you get it wrong, and they all end up going one way or the other. We're heading down towards turn number 5. All these drivers on the brakes right now, and well, it does seem as though it's the game of who flinches first. But the question we need an answer to is what exactly happened to Tom Davidson and also to Martin Rendell only months ago. And here's a replay, ladies and gentlemen. Now, this was Martin Rendell firstly. Of course, we did have the spin through. I think this is the replay of the spin as he was chasing after Mark Peza, and in the end, just losing at the rear of his own volition coming through the AMG arena. But at the same time, this happens to Tom Davidson, and he was coming out of turn number 5. Rear of the car was already loose. The Sim Racing Sweden machine, the 74, went every which way to try and avoid the contact, to be fair. You cannot fault Miles Owens for that, because he literally, in fact, can we get on board with Miles Owens? I think he was playing a juggling act with the steering wheel. Watch his inputs on the steering. Looks one way, then the other, then the other. He has to keep switching back, and in the end, he's got nowhere to go and has to make an unfortunate attack with Tom Davidson's car. But Miles Owens there, if he'd gone on the brakes, he would have snapped loose as well. The weight transfer coming out of turn number 5 would have sent the car sideways. He did his best to avoid it, but it's just one of those, I think, where unfortunately he's had to make contact. He's had no way to escape that contact there with Tom Davidson, and I'm sure they'll talk about it at the end of the race and the fact there was nothing else that could really be done. But it's a good thing we come back to your live racing, because there's William Chandler up the inside of Schwab in towards 1, and as they come in towards AMG this time, Schwab back on the inside. You can see them have Gardner, leading AM driver, under pressure. Jonas Wenzel all in the back of him as well, and Wenzel having started all the way down 24th place. He wants to try and take his first down win of the season. Mav Gardner wants the same, and Gardner's pinched there behind Chandler. Chandler goes round, and Gardner gets caught up right behind him, and suddenly Jonas Wenzel takes the lead of the AM class, but he's under pressure from Tom Davidson, and he surely has just got to let the pro driver go here. Not that he has to, mind you, but if I was in Jonas Wenzel's shoes, I would let it go, because there is too much at stake here. As hold up a second, that's Liam Giles who was parked up there on the grass for a brief moment. Didn't quite catch what's happened to him, but Giles had to tow to the pits. William Chandler's had to tow to the pits as a result of the contact. It's all absolutely happening now with only 2 minutes left on the clock, and we're speaking of 2 minutes to go. Well, for our race leader, Kieran Sharp, well, he'll know that it's going to be one more turn of the circuit, and it's just him and Nick Clemens in contention now for the lead this race, because Jamie Nuttall is 4 seconds back and trying to hold off Miles Owens for 3rd and the final spot on that overall and pro podium. But will Owens be the one to contest him, or will it be Kieran O'Reilly, Andrew Pike, who stay right there with him? We will see, as Jack Southfield, meanwhile, a bit further back and not quite able to get involved in this. Between the two of them, they have got a lap down car there in the form, I believe, of what is David Long. And well, for David Long, it definitely has been a bit of a challenging day at the office today, but still good to see him out there trying to give it his all as best he possibly can. But final lap absolutely now running away with us, and as we do look to the final lap, we take a look back to what is your leaders here, as Kieran Sharp under major pressure. We look back from the rear of your race leader now as he heads out of the AMG arena. Now, both drivers would definitely deserve this win if they can pull it off, but for the Sim Racing Collective Esports driver, well, he'll feel as though he's earned it the hard way, albeit with Nick Clemens having the damage on his car. The iRacing Esports car, it's bruised, but it's not broken, and Clemens will be looking for one last opportunity. Both of these drivers have pushed each other to the limit. Coming in towards turn number 6. What can Clemens do here? Well, the answer is not too much. Sharp seems to be quite comfortable, but now there's a long run coming out of Bielstein Curve. This is where Clemens needs to nail the exit, but he takes a very early apex there, puts himself slightly out of sync for the corner, and Kieran Sharp gets the better exit of 2. There will be the draft as they make the way up towards Vidal, but something tells me here Nick Clemens is going to have to send it, and Sharp knows it's coming, and he knows he's comfortably ahead here, so Sharp puts the car right in the middle of the road. All he's got to do now is now they're under braking here, and Clemens will not find a way through. Once they make the way out of the corner, Clemens doesn't get the best run out of the chicane either. One corner between them and a checker flag, but who's going to be your winner, ladies and gentlemen? Well, through the final quarter, Kieran Sharp leads. The checker flag gets ready to wave, and Clemens, as much as he's huffed and puffed, he's run out of steam because they head towards the line. Kieran Sharp is going to be your winner in race number 2 for the Sim Racing Collective Esports. It's another win for the team, ahead of Nick Clemens, who takes the runner-up spot. Jamie Nuttall completes the podium overall, and in the pro class, in Miles Owens, Kieran O'Reilly and Andrew Pike. 7 seconds back, it's going to be Jack Salfield ahead of Sam Smith, with Craig Twardock in the end, holding off Marlin Schwab for 9th place. Janos Wenzel takes his first AM podium and wins first AM win of the season in 11th place. Well done to the privateer in the 313. What an effort, ahead of Tom Davison and Clive Baum, with Daniel Moffat once again on the AM podium ahead of Paul Sims, who after his race number 1 will be absolutely ecstatic about being on the podium in this second race, and he completed your top 15 ahead of Francesco Petalin, with Mav Gardner having to settle for 4th place in the end in the AM class as a result of that collection with William Chandler right at the end of the race. Alan McCain, and then Mark Pizer takes his first top 5 of the AM class this season. Well done to him with 19th, and Corelio Turan rounds up your top 20 with a 6th place in the AM class. A brilliant effort from Corelio, and well, I think for him, it's a sign of things to come here, because he definitely dug deep for that one. We see at the line there, that is a photo finish, but I believe Valerio Tedeschi has just outpaced Bart Raven to the checkered flag for 26th place overall. That's the AM driver ahead of the pro. Raven there having a difficult day in the office despite putting on some great theatrics, but what a race, ladies and gentlemen, goodness me. And as our drivers make the way back to the pit lane, well, for Kieran Sharp, he'll be absolutely over the moon with this result, because he had to really fight for it, and Nick Clemens made sure that it was kept honest all the way up to the final 5 yards before that checkered flag. But for Sharp, nothing could daunt him. And for Nick Clemens, whilst he may not have taken a win, he'll be very happy to be on the podium there for iRacing Esports and landing his first real major points of the season in what has definitely been a tough season that's thus far in the sprint race here today, but also at Okayama only a week ago. But as they make the way into the pits, we take a look to the scenic view, ladies and gentlemen, and with it, let's take a look at those race results from our feature race here in Germany. So the results come up on the screen, and as they do, all these provisionals subject to any stewards' inquiries, of course. And as we can see, following our 30-minute feature race here in round number 2 of the Sim Racing Collective MX-5 Championship for 2025, as brought to you on iRacing from the Nürburgring Sprint Strecker, Kieran Sharp, your winner by 1.3 tenths of the Sim Racing Collective Esports over iRacing Esports' Nick Clemens. In third, Jamie Nuttall for Cracked Race, and he'll be gutted to have missed out on the win, but still, given how race number 1 ended for him, a 3rd place, all things considered, I think he'll take that in his stride. Miles Owens, 4th there for Sim Race Sweden. Unfortunate to miss out on the podium, given the fact he did hold on to it for a good amount of time, but in the end, the 3 ahead of him just managed to outclass him when it came to battling into the corners. But still, for Miles, he'll take the positives from this one and move forward, particularly when he was able to pick Kieran O'Reilly to the checker flag by 3 attempts, with the MSA Racing driver rounding off your top 5. Andrew Pike was ahead of his Sim Racing Collective Esports teammate Jack Salford in 6th, with Sam Smith for iRacing Esports taking an 8th place there ahead of Craig Twardock. The MSA Racing driver absolutely making his MX-5 so wide you would think it was a bus. But in the end, as much as he tried to park the bus, some drivers got through, but not so for Marlin Schwab, who, given the fact he started all the way down in 33rd place, if you'd said to him you're going to finish in 10th place at the end of this one, I don't think he would have believed you, and I don't think he's going to quite believe it either. Behind the DLR FP1 driver, it was then Janos Wenzel who was best of the rest in 11th. However, more importantly for the driver on his home soil, after a dismal race number 1 where he collected Marlin Schwab, well, in this one, he he's had a much better race. He's taken and victory, his first and win of the season. Well done to Janos. He'll be absolutely ecstatic about that one. A 10th or 2 ahead of the Sim Racing Collective Esports is Tom Davidson, who was 12th. And it was Clive Bourne for Big Pig Racing by VRS in 13th. Head of run-up in the AM class there, Daniel Moffat, the privateer, with Paul Sims rounded off the AM podium there in 15th place. And again for Paul, much like for Janos, what a drive there for the 3-2-1 drive to make his way all the way from the back of the field to finish on the AM podium. He'll be pleased with that. Mav Gardner, unfortunate not to take an AM podium, 4th place in class, 16th overall, head of Alan McCain, with Mark Pizer in 18th place there in his first AM top 5 of the season. What a great effort from him at the privateer, and showing that he's definitely got some great potential as the season goes on. He was ahead of Krylia Toran, and then from the Ukrainian driver, it was Martin Foster who completed the top 20, and what a day today. We really will feel as though all the happiness from what was the race in Okayama has definitely been brought back to a reality check, and will the RPS SimSport driver will need to dig deep ahead of next round. Thomas Martin was 21st for Shadow Drake Racing ahead of Gareth Ronda, with Martin Rendell, Matt Smith and Francesco Pettine round off your top 25. It should be pointed out that Pettine did receive a post-race time penalty due to instant points picked up, so he was demoted from his 16th place finish due to race added time and moved down to 25th, as shown on screen for Absolute Motorsport Aceliv, and that would be for breaching the 17 instant point cap, with Valeria Tedeschi in 26th place there ahead of Bart Raven in their split finish to the line. When the cracked racing driver, it was Labraca Racing Team's David Long, who was the first to try at least a lap down in 28th. And it was also a lap down there for Bradley Horsnell and Lenny Hansen. And you've got to feel for the bottle job racing driver, who after that brilliant result in race number 1 to be 2nd place in the AM class, where it will feel as though it was a dream that's now turned into a nightmare. 2 laps down, it was the cracked racing pair of Liam Giles and William Chandler. And unfortunately, we did have a retirement from the race for Luke Smith for FD Racing, who retired only at the best part of what was 4 laps into the distance. But 33 starters, 32 finishes, ladies and gentlemen, of which 27 on the lead lap. But with that, that brings a close our racing, but it doesn't quite conclude our broadcast, because coming up in about 5 minutes time, we're going to have post-round interviews with our volunteer drivers, ladies and gentlemen. If you enjoyed all the racing, you're definitely going to enjoy hearing what our drivers had to say all about it. We'll be back soon. Don't go anywhere. You won't miss these post-round interviews. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it is time for our post-round interviews, and we're going to jump straight into it by having a chat with our winner from our feature race just now. Overall and in pro, it's none other than Kieran Sharp. Good evening to you, Kieran, and well, a win in race number 2 after a bit of a frustrating end to our first race of the day in the sprint. All things considered, a night to be happy about?
Yeah, the race was really close up front. First race, for most of it, we were all, jostling for positions here and there, and it's just unfortunate at the end. Got caught up in a bit of a spin, but then I managed to take the win in the second race as a result. So, yeah, I think Nick was being way too kind at the front. I was expecting him to make a few more moves earlier on after we built a gap, but yeah, it's not too bad. Could be worse.
Oh, indeed, an absolutely brilliant effort from yourself. And considering when we caught up just before you went racing it today, you were saying to me that you needed to do a bit more practice, shall we say. You were trying to overcome some skill issues. I mean, qualifying-wise, 5th place in such a tight field, I don't think there's any skill issues there.
Yeah, it just felt like I didn't have anything crazy over everyone else, so I just had to kind of stay there. And the slipstream's crazy in these, so as long as you're 6 to even 8 attempts back, you're in the fight. So it's just, if you've got that pace advantage, you've got a bit more leeway than racing one another.
Well, it's absolutely fair, a little bit of leeway. And what do you think it is that perhaps will enable you to find a couple more attempts with the MX-5? Because they're not easy cars to race at this level.
I think it just depends on the track. I think like Tom, he wasn't that crazy quick last week, or I think he got caught up in the feature race. But then he was really quick this week. I think Nuttall seems really consistent around most of these tracks, but I think it's mostly just the racing's so close in these. It's just a matter of if the track suits that driver or not, for the most part.
Well, absolutely fair, and appreciate the insights there with regards to the fact it can come down to the track as much as it can with regards to your knowledge of the car. So going from qualifying in 5th place, sprint race, staying in the lead pack for such a long period of time, right towards the front. But it looked so as we went deeper and deeper into the race, suddenly the pack starts to expand and you find yourself in the end falling to a 7th place finish.
Yeah, I unfortunately got tagged after I was racing with Tom, and Bettany came a bit too deep in at the back of the pair of us, and fortunately got tagged around. And these cars take ages to get going again, and the first gear is so long, so I dropped from like 3rd or 4th down to nearly outside the top 10 until I think I was lucky Milo in the first race had to slow down on the final lap, which helped me as well. But yeah, it's super tight. I think most people kind of get the idea. You've got to kind of settle in a bit, try and build some gaps, and then at the end it's kind of a free-for-all when you've got the gaps to race one another.
Or indeed, like you say, a bit of a free-for-all the deeper and deeper you go into the distance of the race, and particularly as you're getting into those closer laps. But if 15 minutes is a bit of a free-for-all towards the end, then going into the feature, I mean, you must have felt to yourself, okay, I'm starting 4th on this grid. I've got a great opportunity here to try and snag a win.
Yeah, I thought about the probably the worst start possible. I accidentally had to steer into the left without realizing it, so I pulled off and immediately started going to the left, so straight ahead. So, rookie mistake, but I mean, there's not really much in it in these standing starts. They're so slow getting off the line that you only really make 1 or 2 positions up at most in these things.
Well, that's absolutely fair. And I mean, you might have had the difficulties with the race start, and we did catch it there with the steering not pointing quite straight. But when we did get going, it was only 2 laps, and then suddenly we're behind the safety car. Did that perhaps disrupt your rhythm, or do you think, this is an ideal opportunity to regroup and go on the attack again?
I think it really mattered, to be honest. I think maybe if it carried on, it would have been a bit more spicy at the front with people coming through field like Jack with the momentum. But yeah, the safety car probably neutralized it a little bit, but not as much as you would think of these, because the slipstream's so strong, it really doesn't matter once it gets going again.
Oh, absolutely fair. Well, once it got going again, we got to see some absolutely superb racing. But yourself and Nick Clemens gradually broke away as we headed towards the final couple minutes of the race distance. Was there always the plan to try and work with one of the drivers as with your pack?
Yeah, Nick was, willing to work together. I think he was rigging the car a bit on the straights just to let me know that, he's not really going for it. T1, I think he was, not really he was holding back as well when he could have made some moves, and that definitely helped in the feature race. In the sprint race, I was kind of just holding back, letting them figure it out, and hoping I'll capitalize on maybe an instant or something I did originally gain until then the instant at the end of the sprint race. So it's I think those that are patient and keep it clean, those will have the most consistent results throughout the season. So I think I'm probably going to go with that strat to the end.
Well, absolutely fair approach, and it worked out for you. And the battling all the way to the end was absolutely brilliant. Oh, one thing that was noticeable is in the last couple of laps, it seems as though you knew exactly where Nick was faster than you and where he would naturally gain the toe on you, and you knew exactly where to put the car. And the last couple of corners, we saw it at the chicane, it was almost if you do right, if I just put the car in the middle of the road and don't miss my braking point, I've got this all done.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he was being so kind. I think that I wasn't sure if he wanted to go for something. So, but just in case, I put it in the middle and held on to the lead at the end. But I think some other drivers wouldn't have been that kind up front.
Well, that's absolutely fair. Some drivers are kind, some are not, but I can imagine that Nick might have had a bit of a mindset, which was to essentially take the second place. And, well, if the two of you come together, it would spoil the race for both of you. But still, both of you having your smart heads on tonight, no doubt about it. So, some big points scored again, much like at Okayama. You're making a bit of a habit of this now, 2 rounds in. How are you feeling for our third round in a week's time? And, of course, that's when we make our way to the Silverstone International Circuit.
I like Silverstone as a track. International, you don't really get to use often. So yeah, I think that's a bit of an unknown for many of us. Track limits can be kind of interesting there through the international shortcuts. That would certainly keep people on their toes again. Also, the weather as well. It's we're using real weather in this. The forecast of the weather. And also, we know what that's like in the UK at the moment, so yeah, it could be some rain as well.
Oh, no doubt about it. We definitely could expect to see some potential rain. Like you say, the weather in the United Kingdom at the moment has been uncharacteristically unpredictable, or should I say characteristically unpredictable and uncharacteristically cooler than normal, and a lot more rain for this time of year. So it'll be interesting to see whether that factors its way into the weather at Silverstone in a week's time. But just before we do let you go, Kieran, is there anywhere you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast tonight?
Just everyone turning up and racing. We've got a solid sized grid and hope to continue that to the end.
Oh, 100% with you on that. Well, with that, we'll leave it there. Thank you for joining me in the interview room, and well done on your results, particularly that brilliant drive to victory in the feature race. We look forward to plenty more at Silverstone in a week's time.
Thanks. See you there.
So here and there, ladies and gentlemen, from Kieran Sharp. A very happy Kieran Sharp with regards to his performances, albeit perhaps a little bit surprised at the fact that Nick Clemens did not push him as much as he expected towards the end of the feature race. However, talking about there the fact as well, the kindness between the two drivers, and perhaps putting it down to both drivers wanting to essentially focus more on consolidating the points and not fall backwards, or at least that's our thought process. But also talking a bit there about the challenges with the MX-5 and the fact that Okayama, he definitely was top 5 pace, and again here, just managed to get himself in the top 5 in qualifying, but finding from track to track, his ability to be right up there becomes a little bit dependent, whereas other drivers might have the pace out the bag wherever they go, and that's all part of the learning process. And still, he's enjoying his race, no doubt about it. And whilst the sprint race didn't quite go to plan, the feature race definitely did. And he's always got a philosophy in mind, which is no matter how bad race 1 goes, you can always seize an opportunity in race number 2. Well, speaking of season opportunities, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take the opportunity to get ready for a second interview. And coming up shortly, it's going to be a familiar name, albeit he won't be quite familiar because we haven't interviewed him so far this season. But if you've been tuning into Sim Racing Collective Series for some time, you'll know this man as soon as we start speaking to him. We'll be back in less than 30 seconds. As we come back, ladies and gentlemen, joining me now in the interview room is none other than Andrew Pike. Good evening to you, Andrew. And well, whilst we've just spoken to your teammate, Kieran, he's had a very positive night. For yourself, A bit of a different night, perhaps a better night than Okayama in some respects. Qualifying, not so great. Sprint race, decent. Feature race, a top 6. I mean, how do you feel about it?
Well, it shows what happens if you do no practice whatsoever, and then when you do turn up to practice, you get driven into by one of your other teammates on purpose. So I wasn't really prepared. I didn't expect to be qualifying anywhere above where I was. Just looked to enjoy the racing, which, as you say, both races went kind of well for me. I did spin William Chandler in race 1 accidentally, which so one of those place gains was fraudulent, but that was loads of fun. I sort of had learned the track and the car by about the middle of race 2, I think.
Well, indeed, may not have had the opportunity to practice like you say, but looked so you're enjoying yourself out there. And as the racing went on, I mean, with respect to that enjoyment factor, what's the one thing you try to latch on to then when you haven't had the chance to practice? What are you trying to learn on the fly, if you will?
Just where the limit of the car and the limit of the tyre is. Once you've done enough laps in these cars, this type of car, you know to keep the momentum up, and you know not to push them hard when they're cold, because you'll spin absolutely guaranteed. But it's to catch the boys at the front of this field, you need to be right on the limit with it. So it's the nuances, learning where you can and can't gain time, making sure you don't get dropped out of the toe, which it happened to me in both races, to be fair. I think had I been able to get back into the toe in the second one a bit earlier, I might have been able to push through, or at least have a crack at pushing through a bit earlier. I was on the back of the train for P3 at the end there, but I was only really there for about 2 laps. So it's just a case of working out the car. I will try in subsequent weeks. I will try to maybe get a few laps in before I turn up, but I've not had the opportunity. So yeah, it's just a case of sort of pushing it a bit and working out what I can and can't get away with, essentially.
Well, that's absolutely fair. It's all about, like you say, gradually getting there week in and week out and seizing those opportunities when you get the time to build up the pace and a bit of practice. But from qualifying to the sprint race, I mean, we saw you exchanging some battles with pro drivers further down the field, like yourself, and also a couple of AMs out there. What's it like battling with an AM? I mean, in your mind, do you sort of just treat them as another driver? Or is there a bit of, why are you fighting me? Because we're in 2 different classes.
I think it depends what's at stake for each driver in question. So, I mean, generally, I'm happy to race anybody. Sometimes it seems a bit daft when you're different classes, really fighting door to door, but I didn't have that. I had the AM leader in and around me on race 1. Was absolutely fine. We're all here to race, so as long as it's sensible and respectable, then people, if they want to back out, they will back out. Nobody did anything unnecessary, sort of wild lunges that took out a class leader or anything like that. So it's kind of in the hands of both drivers. It's 50-50 responsibility to decide whether to fight it or not. And they've been absolutely fine. The pace difference isn't that substantial. The quicker of the AM drivers are absolutely right amongst the pros. Deservedly so. They know how to get a good lap time out of the car. But everybody's trying to be as careful as they can. I think we've seen a few clumsy ones tonight, I think, but that'll be picked up by the stewards, and those offenders will be dealt with, I'm sure. But yeah, it's scrapping amongst the classes. If it's not huge time loss, then I think it's fine. But as you say, sometimes it can be counterproductive, especially in a car that relies heavily on the toe, and on a track where the toe made quite a difference. It could have been a mistake. I'm sure some people probably made that mistake.
Well, indeed, mistakes were made, and we did see quite a few. But like you say, there's also the stewarding process there after the racing in order to make sure any bad actors are subsequently penalised, and those who are innocent, well, it's always just perhaps a gentle slap on the wrist. But still, sprint race, we got to see you right in the thick of it. Feature race, meanwhile, a safety car slowed the pace down before we really got underway. And then found yourself in a bit of a lonely position for a good chunk of the race, really giving chase to the rest of the top 6. I mean, that must have felt a bit odd, being out there by yourself in clear air, when normally MX-5 racing is all about being in the pack.
Exactly right. These are so much fun if you're racing door to door. They're quite forgiving with some of the contact, so you can push and bump. door bang a little bit. So finding myself for several laps floating around on my own is a little bit. I was sort of praying for a bit more fighting in front of me to allow me to catch up. But equally, it was the fighting behind me that allowed me to get away once I got into about P8. I think Craig and Jack were having a ding dong, which cost them probably 5 seconds. I got away. Sadly for me, it didn't really happen ahead. They were working together quite well, and I could see on the relatives at every straight they were in the tow and dragging themselves away from me. But I just had to make sure I didn't get caught up in anything. There were a few crashes around me in that one. Gained 4 or 5 spots again. I think same as the first one, but just really by picking my time sort of to fight and picking my times not to, which worked out for me in the end. In that one, it was quite tidy. But as you say, it's stuck in no man's land. You know, you enter leagues in these types of cars for nose to tail, door to door, scrapping, but you can't pick and choose how that goes. You just deal with what you're handed, I suppose.
Or like you say, you have to take the hand you're dealt, and well, you've made it work out in race number 2 to pick up some good points. So 2 rounds in, mixed fortunes, but moving forward, round number 3 in a week's time, we head to Silverstone. How are you feeling for the international layout?
I think that'll be mental in these Slipstream Fest. We know what it's like from other series, other formulas. It's a power circuit essentially with cars that don't have any power, so that's going to rely heavily on staying in the tow. It's nice and wide, so there's room. If people give space, there's room for 2, maybe 3 wide in quite a lot of places. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be good fun, and hopefully I managed to get through this week without putting poor old Sam Smith up over the barrier. If I can get through next week without doing it as well, given that he's in a motion rig, then I think everybody will be pretty pleased.
Oh, goodness me, indeed. I think we'll all remember the moment between yourself and Sam Smith at Okayama. And like you say, for the man in the motion rig to go over the barrier, I can only imagine what that must have felt like at the time for him. But still, the past is the past, the present is the present, and we look forward to the future. And indeed, seeing yourself at Silverstone International is going to be a blast in all these machines. Howard, just before I do let you go, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast tonight?
Thanks to yourself for another solid broadcast. We're well used to the standards from you. I think some of my family are watching tonight. My poor old mum lost her dog today. She's probably fairly sad, so this might have cheered her up seeing this one. So a shout out to those for sticking with it and watching it.
Credit where it's due. And well, Mrs. Pike, if you are tuning in right now and listening, very sorry to hear about the passing of your dog. But no, it's great to have you with us, and hopefully, like Andrew has said, this broadcast has brought you a bit of cheer and a bit of a smile to your face and turns that frown upside down. But with that, Andrew, we're going to leave it there. Thank you for joining me in the interview room. As always, it's been a pleasure, and we look forward to plenty more from yourself in a week's time in round number 3. But well done on the results, and have a great rest of your evening.
Brilliant, mate. Thank you very much. Speak to you soon.
So here and there, ladies and gentlemen, from our second interview, another member of the Sim Racing Collective esports team, Andrew Pike, a pro today, who openly admitted he hadn't had the opportunity to get any practice in, so therefore had to go with what he had, and he made the most of what he had, no doubt about it. However, getting to grips with it and talking about the fact that finding the pace and finding the rhythm, and in qualifying, the outlap plus free flying laps not really enabling that. In the sprint race, however, getting to enjoy mixing things up with both AMs and pros, and talking about the interesting dynamic of sometimes not wanting to battle with AM drivers, and other points really wanting to battle with them and get on past and enjoying the racing as he goes. So a good, intriguing mix-up, and with that in mind, of course, it does really give you an insight. When a pro qualifies a bit further down than perhaps they want to, they suddenly do have this dilemma of needing to work their way past AM drivers who are very eager to show themselves on the pros and also put pros between themselves and the rest of their AM peers. But for the pros, it really is a big juggling act, and therefore it's a juggling act which they all have to try and work their way through. And it didn't quite work out in the sprint race as much as he'd like to, but in the feature race, made it work, moved forward, and in the end, he finished in 6th place. So solid consistency, and got himself up to speed in that second race a day, and will now definitely, of course, thinking to himself what he can achieve in a week's time at the International Layout of Silverstone. We look forward to that, I can tell you that, ladies and gentlemen, and could we see him right up there mixing it up? Well, we definitely hope so. But with that, we're going to be bringing our interviews to a close there, I think. In fact, we will just double check if we've got one more on the way. I don't think we have, but we'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll see what we can do with regards to one final interview. Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get a third interview in there. We're just double checking, but nobody else is available this evening. So as a result, we'll call it there of our interviews. And a big thank you to our Sim Racing Collective esports drivers of Kieran Sharp, firstly, from the Pro Class, and then subsequently Andrew Pike from the Pro Class as well, for joining me for post-round interviews. Both of them there having different sets of results. Congratulations to Kieran for taking that win in the feature race particularly, and also to Andrew Pike for coming through, despite limited practice, to make his way into a top 10 finish in the final race of the day. Well done to them both on their results, and we look forward to plenty more from them and all of our drivers up and down the field in a week's time. But with that, it's now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show, and perhaps you're sat there right now wanting to know more about the Sim Racing Collective, well, we definitely recommend you check out our official website, and that is at www.tsrc.club, and that website appearing on screen in 3, 2, 1, and there it is, the home of all information for the Sim Racing Collective, all of our social media channels on the left-hand side, the homepage, of course, on your screen. We've got news and our rules in the top right, and we've also got all of our listed partners and affiliates there. And if you do want to be on the grid with us, all you've got to do is click on the Join Our Discord button in the centre of the screen, and you'll be taken to the official beating heart of the Sim Racing Collective community, and that way you can get racing with us straight away, whether it be in the MX-5 Championship, in more of our casual series, or everything in between, whether it be in iRacing or other platforms as well. You name it, we run it here at the Sim Racing Collective, and you'd not find a more welcoming community to be on the grid with. But if you don't necessarily want to go to our website or join the Discord, you can, of course, follow us on social media, and you can follow us on Twitter, twitter.com/the Sim Racing Collective _official, or that's TSRC _official, and then you can stay up to date with all the latest news, announcements, and broadcasts with regards to the Sim Racing Collective and everything in between. But with that, we'd also like to take a moment to say a big thank you to our partners and affiliates, who do include Motorsport UK's esports division. We'd also like to say a big thank you to SimGrid, Coach Dave Academy, and Abruzzi Simulation and Motorsport. And we'd also like to say a big thank you to all of you guys and girls who've tuned in and engaged in the chat today, including Mr. Rich, also there, Defian, also 4266, and also to Handsome Stu, who's good looking as always. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we'll call it there for today's broadcast, because round number 2 is complete in the books. But in a week's time, we make our way to Silverstone's International Circuit for round number 3, and on Monday the 22nd of September 2025 it's going to be the beating heart of British motorsport that is going to see our drivers roar the way around its shorter but absolutely wide and incredible international layout. It can be expected to be 3-4 wide for MX-5s into practice each and every corner, but who will carry momentum through to victory as we head towards the halfway point of the championship campaign? For all that and more, you know what you're going to need to do. You'll need to tune in on YouTube at the Sim Racing Collective in a week's time. We'll see you there. But until then, we've been the Sim Racing Collective. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and much like our drivers, ladies and gentlemen, remember to stay on track. Good night.